turn on this computer. Right. So, yes, good evening and welcome back to our webinar series, if I can say so, where you get to listen to faculty members of Azim Premji University. My name is Rajgopal and I lead admission outreach here, and we sincerely hope that these webinars will help or is helping class 11, 12 students, for the kind of programs or courses they should pursue in higher education, right? Today, I think we're living in a world where there is too many options, a lot of confusion, and we hope this will help you in some form or other, right? So we did 4 webinars last week, and this week we start with a very, very, very important program, and that we offer at Azim Premji University, and that is BA English. Right? Why important? Because the way I see English, it's a very important language. It's a window for us to understand the world, and also a way to reflect on our own lives. Right? We've been offering English since 2015. As part of that time, we offered a combined humanities program, and since last couple of years, we started offering this as a standalone program, right, as a BA English. But now it's special. Why it's special? Because it's a 4-year BA honors program aligned with the New Education Policy 2020, and more special because from July 2024 we are launching English as a major at the Bhopal campus of Azim Premji University. And I was just did this tiny little bhashan for people to join in Rukma. So we have our faculty members, specifically those who are teaching at the Bhopal campus here. I'm going to feature them here so they can see them on the spotlight, and I'll quickly go behind the scenes, and then over to you, Rukma, Debolina and Neha. I'm not introducing them. If I start introducing their profiles, it will take another 10-15 minutes. You should read about them, where they have trained, what the work they were doing. Amazing colleagues of mine who are there to interact with you. And I think the picture that's there on the first slide kind of is a giveaway the way we look at English as a language, not as a subject. Right? That's a problem if you look at someone the way English is taught in schools is English as a sometimes as a subject where we forget the beauty of the language. On with that short intro, over to the faculty members. Thank you. You need to unmute yourself.
Sorry, I thought I did. I'm so sorry. Thanks, Rajagopal. So I was saying it's wonderful today to meet enthusiasts of literature who, like the rest of us who will be speaking today, share this enthusiasm for forms of art that are around the written word. And those of us who are also if you have chosen to attend the webinar, you have chosen to take your interest and your enthusiasm to another level and engage with English, with literature at a more at the level of academics and perhaps even at a vocational level. So my name is Rukma, like Rajagopal mentioned, and I am a faculty here at Azim Premji University in the Bhopal campus. So to begin the session, I would like to briefly explain the philosophy of change and of inclusion that lies at the heart of the discipline of English studies, and that is immensely reflected in the program that we have here as well. So I would like to do this broadly as several ways in which we currently see English literature in the university classroom. So, and these changes that I'm talking about are broadly in the areas of what do we study, how do we study these, and also about how it is taught. Now, in terms of what we study, earlier curricula, we would all know people who did literature. The popular perception was that they studied Shakespeare, they studied Wordsworth. We do study Shakespeare and Wordsworth as well, but it's not just these texts that we study. We don't, what is disparagingly called as dead white men in the discipline. are not the only things that we study anymore. So, moving forward from these English writers and later these American writers who lived in lands far, far away from us, who lived 700, 500, 400 years ago. Um, we're moving away from them, and universities across India, this is in the decades post independence, decided that we should study people who are more, who reflect who we are, who the inhabitants of the classroom is as well. Right. So this led to the birth of a new canon of literature in English in the Indian classroom, which included more Indian literature in English, and it represented a change in culture as well, where the culture of English literature was not just British literature. It was not just about an American way of life, but it started encompassing the struggles of people who currently speak English, who engage with English, the stories of resistance and of valor and triumph that they brought into the discipline. So the books that we read in the classroom, that we currently read also, started becoming more congruent and started reflecting these struggles more, the struggles of our historical present, our immediate past, and also of the values and the culture that we wanted to imbibe and also to emulate. So the idea of literature, as well as what came to be called literature in English, saw a change in Indian classrooms in the decades that followed independence. So then, a few decades down the line, closer to our times, we realized that our idea of what is Indian literature in English, even that needed to be changed a little. So this opened doors to a variety of new writers who were um, writing in not only in English but also in vernacular literatures, and they started getting translated and thus gaining entry to the English literature classroom as well. So now the idea of literature and of culture we have seen has changed. Um, so this second tweaking of what does this mean for Indian literature in classrooms brought in a range of voices, right? That's why when I teach the couplet, I teach not only the Shakespearean sonnet and the couplet that ends with, couplet being two lines of poetry. I also teach Tiruvalluvar. I teach the couplets of the Tirukural. I teach the couplets in the songs by Beatles. So all of this come together to create a vibrancy in the English classroom that was perhaps not as bright earlier. This created a range of new voices in the Indian classroom. So alongside this reading of different kinds of text together, different voices together, say a Perumal Murugan novel is read alongside a Sarojini Naidu poem. We've also realized that what we call literature in terms of the form that it takes should also be widened a little. And I forgot to change slides earlier. And all of this is what we call literatures in English, right? So the forms of literature has changed. What we call literature
Ah,
has changed. The forms
hi, darling. Hi,
changing.
darling.
Excuse me, sir. Can you mute yourself? Thank you. Uh, yes. So the forms has changed, and by this I mean that we don't just look at books of poetry. We don't just look at novels anymore. We also look at spoken word poetry. We look at performed pieces. We look at the performances of plays in addition to the written plays by Arthur Miller or any one of the canonical figures like that. So the idea of literature has shifted to a textual reading. It has become about what is written, about what is spoken, what is visual. It has been become about reading spaces. How does one understand spaces within literature? About the tactile and so on. So the sensibility that one gets from reading these new texts also changes. One has a range of skills that one can choose from now. One has a range of artists that one can listen to and learn from now, and the skills have become more widely applicable. So we can say now that a degree in English now has changed from being say about knowing all the poets in the neoclassical era, say, to having access to a wide range of voices. And literature became more democratic in that sense, along with our nation to a certain extent. And now more artists get to speak to these students in our classrooms. Now, along with the democratization of literature, along with a whole lot of people getting to speak, finally, we also have a democratization of the classroom, meaning that it's not just me as the teacher who speaks in the classroom. Our pedagogy has also changed. And I would say that that is a much slower change than maybe a change in the syllabi, because currently, especially in the way that we practice in the university, my students read along with me. They don't read after me, they read when I read. We read together, and they don't talk or they don't voice just the opinions of what a Shakespearean critic about G. Wilson Knight would have said about Hamlet, but they think about Hamlet. They imagine different possibilities of being Hamlet, being in Hamlet's head, and not just what generations before them have taught about Hamlet. So it's become less about regurgitating those and more about thinking alongside those critics. We all take that process of thinking together. So there has been a general trend of democratization in many senses. In like I said, about what we read, about how we read it, how we teach it, how we learn literature, what is literature, what forms can be called literature. All of this has become much more broader. Now, this is shown in a lot of ways, or this can be seen in the way that we learn in many approaches. And I think Debolina will be talking more about those. So I'll hand it over to her. And these are some of the texts that we do broadly. We do all of these.
Uh, Thank you, Rukma, for sort of encompassing so much of the journey that English literature has had, and so well. I would just like to maybe start just to sort of continue with what Rukma has already said. Uh, 20 years back, when I was an undergraduate student, it was called English Lit, right? And for ease of access, we call it the English department. But what we really mean is that we are a department who read in the medium of English, but a lot of our texts are translated. So if you look at the PPT, you'll see photographs of Gulzar, Amrita Pritam, Rabindranath Tagore. So right now, most English departments in India are actually Anglophone departments, and that's why we say literatures in English. And this has revised the whole idea that what is worthy of reading. One of the things that we revised in the last 20, 30 years of reading literature is what is worthy of reading. I'll just come to that, but I just want to broadly sort of touch upon, of course, there are many minute, like Rukma said, what is the canon? So we no longer believe that only Wordsworth or Shakespeare's worth reading. But what is it that we do? So I would say that broadly, what learning literature at the undergraduate level will do for a lifetime is it consciously builds a relationship with language and forms of expression that last for a lifetime, whether it is through reading or through other means of analyzing, whether you do close reader text or you learn to read visuals, you learn to write creatively. So I would say a conscious relationship with language and forms of expression. Two, is it teaches us how to interpret culture, and really, really develop a sensibility for cultural interpretation, through many ways. But one of the ways is, for example, I mean, nobody who wrote a book 300 years back, I mean, Shakespeare wrote because he was an entertainer. Jane Austen wrote because she was selling these books. Nobody wrote these books thinking, oh, 300 years later, somebody's going to sit in a classroom and study us and, think it's so serious. So, right off the bat, I would say that literature is one of the oldest forms of entertainment. Before cinema studies, before other kinds of media sort of took over, literature was entertainment. People loved listening to stories. How do we reflect as a culture about who we are? We listen to stories about ourselves. So at the basic, what literature does is it gives you access to cultural archetypes. What are archetypes? Archetypes are just blueprints or patterns or recurrent symbols that we recognize. For example, in India, if I say, oh, he's such a Devdas character, we all know what it means. But Devdas was not really, like, he didn't originate from film, he originated from literature. Or when we say Red Butler, right? We know, many of us who've read these books, we immediately know what he means. Or when we say, oh, he's such a Darcy character. So these are some archetypes that literature gives you access to. And in a sense, what studying literature for 4 years does is it gives you access to some of the finest archetypes in culture. And it gives you access, to some of the finest minds that there are. So if you think of, let's say, the disciplines as various kinds of language to understand the world, you think of chemistry as studying chemicals, you think of physics as studying physical laws. What literature does is, it gives you access to stories. It gives you access to all of this. There is a literature text that will have chemical, like if you look at mysteries, it'll talk of detective mysteries. Some of them are about potions. So literature is not about one thing. It is about a 360-degree view of the world. So that is one thing I would say is amazing about studying literature. Is it is a language of of experiencing the world through some of the greatest minds that there are, but not in only one specific discipline, like not only chemically or like through life forms. It encompasses everything. It is about life. Secondly, so when I earlier said that what is worth reading, what are the stories that are worth telling? Why is literature, quote unquote, different from, let's say, or is it different from, let's say, like the biggest raging debate that I'm not going to sort of indulge in is Chetan Bhagat literature. Should Chetan Bhagat be a part of the canon? So one of the questions we ask ourselves and we debate over is, what are the stories that are worth reading, that are worth telling, and how do some stories last so long? And one of the things that we tell ourselves is there is no story, but the telling of the story changes the story itself. So there is not one way to tell the story. And each time you tell the same story differently, you're telling a different story. And what we study in the literature class is how come some stories are so powerful. We dissect those stories in terms of plot, in terms of character, in terms of tone. And we look at them and we say, my God, why are some of these stories so powerful? And why does it have such a powerful effect on us? Reading literature then for 4 years will give you a natural ability for self-reflection, both in terms of what you think is valuable, in terms of what story is worth telling, but also in terms of the discipline, right? So, back in the day when we were literature students, our teacher would say that actually we are training you to be critics, because back in the day, people who did literature either went into publishing or were writing book reviews. So we also come to another aspect of literature when you study literature is the concept of taste. Because if you're spending 4 years actually sort of studying why some stories are worth, so you naturally have an ability uh, to become an arbiter of taste. But it is not simply about, oh, I have studied 4 years of literature, so I know what is worth reading. But what we teach you is why you think what you think. So the concept of taste. So if you look at the study, the category of literature, if you look at our syllabi, which has people like Ursula K. Le Guin to Mary Shelley to Tagore, we have people all over the world. So when we look at the concept of taste, A, we become critics. But what else is literature? Or are only people who study literature, are they the only ones who can say what's worth reading? So one would be critics like us, you, me, but another would be artists who speak to each other. So a work of literature, often across time and space, will refer to each other. This is what we call the self-referentiality of literature. So, for example, Mary Shelley has written Frankenstein, but 200 years later, Jeanette Winterson will write something called Frankenstein that actually refers to the original Frankenstein, but changes that story completely. So you have, for example, let's say a novel like Jane Eyre, which is an archetype of the independent woman who's also haunted by the ex-wife. And you have that story changing into film, let's say a film like Rebecca, right? So these stories then also speak to each other across culture. And what we have then, by the end of 4 years, you have an idea of this web of cultural transactions. There's a circuit of culture that's formed where we read across culture, across Indian culture, across let's say Japanese or American or Indian or Bengali, right? Across these cultures to see what travels, because in a sense, literature historically is one of the most portable forms of culture. Words have traveled across language, poems have traveled, stories have traveled. Just like food, literature is one of the most portable forms of culture. So you have the concept of critics, you have the concept of artists speaking to each other. And third is the idea of the classic, or what has withstood the test of time. Stories that we have not forgotten. And this is something that brings me to, if I had to say that, after 20 years of being with literature, different forms of literature, what are the main themes that literature speaks about? I would say that it speaks about the passing of time. This is one thing that you see across cultures. What do we do with mortality? What do we do with this human condition and time that continues to pass? The other is, how do we tell stories? How do we remember? What is worth remembering? How do we remember the past in a way that makes the present bearable? So, for example, one of my favorite storytellers, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, says that we are what we remember. We are what we choose to remember, right? So then we also ask, when we are doing partition stories, what is the nature of memory? Is memory reliable? So all of this, and just to give you a little example of how words move across culture, across time, across space, or even within culture. For example, I remember teaching John Donne many years ago in a classroom. And the student of mine actually showed me the connection between John Donne and Hosier. I don't know how many of you've heard Hosier's Take Me to Church, but, and then it turned out that Hosier and John Donne actually are connected in the form of talking about erotic ecstasy. The other example that it came to me, um, a few months back or years back, when I was watching this Karan Johar film. What was the Karan Johar film? The recent one? Rocky Weds Rani, and there was this song called Kudmai. So I'm a Bengali speaker. I speak Bengali, Hindi, and English. Punjabi is not really my language. But there was this word called Kudmai, for example, the credit song. And that reminded me of a song from 1994 film, Hum Aapke Hai Kaun, Mai Ni Mai Munder Pe Teri, Bol Raha Hai Kaga. And then I thought, my God, it's the same word that connects Kurmai of Karan Johar and the Kurmai of 1994. And then when I started looking it up, it turns out that the trope, Mai Ne Mai Mudde. So this is the trope of Punjabi folk music where the daughter is telling the mother about a song and is telling her that please wed me off, is telling her mother about the lover. So you have Shiv Kumar Batalvi, who's written this many times. You have the same song coming up in popular culture in 1994. And again, that word travels 20 years later in a Karan Johar song. If you stay with literature for 4 years, what we hope is that you will be able to cultivate this cultural sensibility of mapping words. There are some constellation and clusters of ideas, of patterns, of thought patterns. So on one hand, we very importantly teach literature in the context of its material production. So when we're teaching Shakespeare, we teach him in his age, in the context where he lived and he wrote. For example, there's no way that you'll find a reference to a mobile phone in Shakespeare. That's commonsensical, but that's also, what we say, right? Because there's no way. He's a historical person. He's a person of his own age. But at the same time, when we teach you Shakespeare, we will also refer to, let's say, Vishal Bhardwaj's movie. What makes Shakespeare relevant to Bollywood 400 years later, right? So both the material context of production that make literature plural, but also what transcends a particular, let's say, a classic beyond his or her time. So these are some of the pathways of reading literature. And I will hand it over to my colleague Neha, who will take on from me.
Thank you, Debolina. Rukma, could I ask you to change the slide? Thank you. So, what can I tell you about the English classroom and where you can expect to find yourself at the end of these 4 years that my colleagues Rukma and Debolina have not already covered much more eloquently? So what do we expect from students who have spent 4 years in a modern day English classroom? And this is a 4 year residential program, the undergraduate program in English. So like Debolina and Rukma have already mentioned, of course, the qualities one associates with a student of literature is a certain enlargement of perspective over these 4 years of just reading across time, across space, often across language through translation. Like Rukma mentioned, the idea of what constitutes literature in English has, of course, had to necessarily change to accommodate a wider breadth of voices. And our syllabi reflects that. So our students are expected to carry that awareness, that consciousness later into whatever it is that they choose to do. That is one. Like my colleague Debolina mentioned, another thing that is expected from the student of literature at the end of the 4 years is, of course, that the web of cultural transaction that so encompasses us, the self-referentiality of these various media productions, that becomes something in which the student is able to intelligibly take part. And a quality that I personally associate with the literature classroom is, of course, the ability to bring critical insight to bear upon whatever it is that one is engaging with. So those are a few things that, of course, you can expect to learn over these 4 years in the literature classroom. But we are deeply cognizant of the fact that as the world around us changes, and as English as a subject, as a discipline, as the idea of literature has also changed, so does the idea of what a degree in English lit lead to need to change as well for students. Basically, how does one sort of future proof the English program, a degree that has such pedigree? For us at APU, the answer is sort of baked into the structure of the program itself. So before I begin to tell you what career opportunities await you at the end of these 4 years, I'd like to very briefly talk about the 4-year literature program at APU. So year one, students have something called flexible courses. There is a great degree of autonomy given to students in terms of what they're able to choose in terms of what they will study. So various electives are available depending on, of course, the faculty profile, and they pick from that. So that is a flexible course. Another thing called common curriculum is a necessary mandatory course that students have to take. The expectation here is that the common curriculum will inculcate essential skills like critical reading and writing, or an understanding of the various facets of modern day India. So not only will you be doing something that is not necessarily related to your disciplinary major, you will be doing it in a classroom that has students from other disciplines as well. So that automatically leads to a more expansive, a more interdisciplinary approach. So common curriculum, like I said, is something that is part of your year one. The third thing, of course, will be your disciplinary major for people who elect to do an honors course in English. That will be courses related to proper literature. In year two, you will have all of these three things: flexible courses, common curriculum, disciplinary major, but you will also have something that we call the occupational minor. So the idea here is that the English classroom needs to provide its students with skills that transfer to cognate disciplines and fields. So an occupational track will basically be an introduction to these various cognate fields in which one can explore career opportunities later. So what are some of the occupational minors available at APU right now? I can talk more confidently about Bangalore and the options that are available there, because we're still in the process of finalizing the list for Bhopal. But basically, this is what you can expect. So your occupational minor can be in education. It can be in media and journalism, in data and democracy, in sports and fields, in arts, and in a discipline that all of us take very, very seriously at APU because it has so much relevance for the future: climate studies. So these occupational tracks are designed in such a way that the students will be able to carry actual skills into the job market with them. So, for instance, the media and journalism occupational track takes note of the fact that over the last 8 to 10 years, the media landscape within the country has changed, particularly because of the advent of what we call digital media. So, because of the advent of these web-only portals like The Wire, Scroll, The Quint, The News Minute, what counts as journalism has started to change. And who can become a journalist, or what kind of news stories are shaping up to tell stories of the present moment and the future, all of that is undergoing a flux. So in keeping with that, the media and journalism occupational minor that we offer has an element of or a module on multimedia storytelling, because the idea here is that the student that we're sending out into the world in 2024 needs to have certain skills with digital production, because the forms that are available to you as latter-day journalists include, say, web reports, podcasts, short news reels. So the multimedia course will basically take students through all of these various skill sets, and the students will be taught also how to handle a variety of softwares. So that is one. Then, of course, as you move on to year 3 and 4, you continue with electives, with occupational minors, with disciplinary majors. But in the last year, you also have a component called research or internship. So the research module gives you an opportunity to dig a little bit deeper into an area that you have already identified as being of particular interest to you and your career journey ahead. And of course, the internship is a very, very important stage in your educational journey, because it gives you not only a chance to develop hands-on experience within cognate industries like publishing, like translation, like media. It also enables you to make important contacts, to network in these fields in a way that will then prove helpful as you start applying for jobs, because you basically get to work with people who could be future bosses, mentors, colleagues, etc. So keeping in mind the fact that all of this is structurally a part of the four-year residential course here, what can one expect to do in terms of career opportunities as a student of English literature? Of course, you can go through the most time-honored portals. You can become either a storyteller, or you can become a teacher at various levels. So teaching within the school system, teaching outside of the school system at the university, becoming a researcher, going for higher education. Those are, of course, opportunities that are always present for you. And because all members of the faculty here are PhD holders, this is something that they can help you with preparing you for higher education, with writing letters of recommendation for students, with basically giving you an idea of what higher education will entail. That is one. If you are interested in creative writing, then these are courses that we offer as part of the English program. There is one called An Introduction to Creative Writing, offered as an elective. There is another for more advanced practitioners of the same. You can, of course, choose to do a more interdisciplinary movement towards cognate disciplines later, pursue higher education across any of the HSS fields. The chance to work in the publishing industry is, of course, very much available. One can choose to become an editor, one can choose to work at any level of the publishing industry. And this is something that, like I mentioned before, is available in the structure of the program. Because if publishing is something that interests you, then we have the internship module through which you can basically get hands-on experience within this field. Another incredibly exciting, incredibly vital area within present-day literature in India is, of course, the field of translation, because you have very exciting new grants like the New India Foundation grant for translation that now provide actual material support to people working within the translation enterprise in India. And of course, there's so much literature that will benefit from being brought to a whole new linguistic audience. And if students are interested in learning the art of translation, in grappling with the nuances of what it means to act as a bridge of a text from one language to another, Introduction to Translation is an elective that we offer as part of the literature program. Finally, like I said, because we also lay a great deal of emphasis and focus on future-proof skills, you can also, if interested, learn how to create content across modalities for audio, for the visual arts, through a variety of the occupational minors that we offer, through a variety of the flexible courses that we offer, and the chance to work across social sectors, to work in an NGO setting is also very much available to a student of literature. And I should also mention at this point that we have an in-house translation team as well. And the idea that a lot of students will express interest in the social sector is also something that deeply informs the fabric of the university. So for these two particular fields, there will be additional support available to the student in terms of infrastructure and mentorship. So, like I said, all of these opportunities are very much baked into the structure of the program. As my colleagues Rukma and Debolina have already mentioned, the English language program as envisioned here does not consist of the canonical sort of dead white male uh, imagination that guided the English classroom for a very long time. So if you want to take a very quick look at the kind of courses that are offered within the literature program, here these are in the slide available to you. So as you can see, while we do retain some traditional English literature components like say romantic literature or the drama, we also take cognizance of other forms and other cultural productions that often don't find space within traditional English classrooms. So as Rukma has already mentioned, when we talk about the poetry, when we talk about poem, when we talk about the short story, the imagination here is not limited to British poets or American poets or British short story or American short stories. So when we teach poetry, you will not only come across, say, the sonnets of William Shakespeare or the modernist epic of T.S. Eliot. You will also be introduced to the haiku form from Japan or the lande from Afghanistan. So that sort of breadth of cultural production is once again a feature of the syllabus. And aside from these more traditional offerings like poetry, short story, introduction to literature, romantic literature, we also have certain courses that have been developed in-house by members of the faculty and that, to our knowledge, are not really offered anywhere else. And these courses have also been developed with the idea that they will give the students certain skills that lend themselves to easy transferring to other fields as well. So if you take a look at writing for the public, for example, that course basically takes students through the forms of long form writing that are available in media today. So students can engage in depth with what it means to write long form narratives, what kind of stories lend themselves to this sort of form and shape, how one can practice becoming this sort of a writer, and where these opportunities are available. Then, of course, the City in Literature, Media, and Culture, originally developed by the Bangalore faculty, is a very, very deeply relevant look at what one's immediate surroundings, how to negotiate with that through cultural production. So the City in Literature, Media, and Culture, as of now, is available in the context of Bangalore as a city, but we also hope to, as the Bhopal campus starts functioning, develop a similar course for Bhopal. So these are, again, like I said, a few of the courses that take cognizance of the fact that this is a sort of future ready English classroom. So I think that brings us to the end of the presentation for today. I would like to invite questions from the audience if you have any for us.
Thank you, Rukma, Debolina, and Neha, in the order in which you all spoke. So, yeah, so if there are questions from the audience, I think we should give them some time to, uh, you know, just digest what has been said. Amazing. When for me, when I've been telling my other colleagues, I've been listening to all these webinars over the last couple of days. How wonderful it will be to sit in your own in your classes. This is like a teaser class for me. Right. So the first question about placements. Yeah, we do have a placement cell, uh, and we call that career guidance and placement cell. It's not only about helping you find placement, but probably uh, also giving you other kind of guidance. Right? But since you asked the question, Hiba, what you've seen around 800 graduates out there, right, who have graduated only from the undergraduate program, especially from the Bangalore campus. We have seen majority of them, 70% of them, it could be to the due to the curriculum, the way it is here, many of them pursue higher education. Right? It could be either in the English literature or some of them develop interest in other areas of, say, human development, maybe public policy or maybe journalism. So many of them go for higher education and both in India and also abroad. And you get nice recommendation letters from the faculty members, it'll add. But if you think you need placement, there are organizations also that comes for recruitment. Yeah. Some of the companies that offer internships. So the way we have structured the internships at Azim, others you can also add in. The way we have structured the internship is, see, when you reach the final year, right, the fourth year, in the 4 year program, or it's all everybody joins the honors program. You make a choice if you would like to do a research with the faculty mentor, or you would like to do an internship. So you make that decision at the final year. And the internship is mostly associated with the occupational minor that you have chosen. So Neha was explaining. So to give an example, the classic combination could be, need not be a, but could be a English, combining that with say media and journalism. So if you say that no, it's not uh, research that I want to do, which could be to understand the impact of Karan Johar movies on the Indian youth. Just making it up because Debolina spoke about Karan Johar. If you say no, that's not the research that I want to do. I want to do an internship in a media organization. So we will find that for you. Right? We will do. Apart from that, in between the semester, if you'd like to do some short internship, it will be all will be depending on the contacts that my colleagues have. They definitely have. And they have all worked in the media houses. They have media houses. So that's possible. Others, if you want to add anything, kindly add. But Anika, hopefully that was the question. So there is internship, which is part, it's credited, it's part of the curriculum that you could do in place of a research, or also in between semesters. I'm sure they all of them are in good company to help you find internships. What's Mikey's question is, can you please explain regarding compulsory and optional courses? Yeah, I think Neha had a slide of compulsory, we call it core courses. So I think the question is, within the BA English curriculum, are there elective choices that they could pick? I'll add on after you're finished. Anybody wants to talk about the elective choices within the BA English?
Um, all right. So there are various kinds of electives that we provide and that we offer. And one is, of course, the occupational minor that Neha spoke about. And these are courses that will prepare you for a particular profession, perhaps a vocation. And this is a set of 5 courses and along with an internship. And then there's also another basket called the minor, the disciplinary minor, which means that suppose you are an English student, you do 4 courses in English. You're also interested in say history. Perhaps because you want to pursue some sort of a hybrid project later on for higher studies, you are interested in history or in social sciences, or even like out of the world, you're interested in biology. You're torn between English and biology, for example. Then you do 5 courses in biology or history or whatever your choice is, and you gain a minor, a minor in this particular discipline. Or you are not interested in going into any particular discipline at that much depth, then you can do a range of courses. You can do a course in history, you can do another course which interests you in social science. You can choose to put together like a small buffet of courses that are across your various interests. So along with this, there are also some extra courses that you can do within the discipline. There are electives offered in English itself. For example, there's a course called The Body in Society, which employs techniques of this field called cultural studies to help you understand how to look at artifacts, and in this case, the body. So there are so many options available, and these are all put in these brackets called minor, occupational track, etc., depending on what the educational reason for us offering them is. So these are some of the various compulsory and optional courses that are available.
Right. Thank you. I think let's see if there is any other questions. Somebody was asking about uh, admit card. Oh, that's part. Yeah, it's a direct message. Give us some time. Admit cards will reach you after sometimes mid March. Uh, is it compulsory for? Oh, there are people I think who have joined who have also been offered for the round one. So yeah, I think you should go by what is written on the offer letter. So if you've been asked to come for a summer program or orientation program, it is mandatory. What are the expectations from students who are shortlisted for the interview? Is there any subjective questions in the interview? All right, okay. So after the entrance test, if they get shortlisted for the interview, or to put it the other way, what do you look for in the candidate in the interview?
Uh, can I go ahead?
Please do.
So one of the things, sorry, what's your name? Uh, who's the person who's asking? What's the name?
One second. I think it's Santosh ji. Santosh.
Santosh. Okay. Santosh, one of the things that makes you a good candidate for, let's say, 4 years of studying English is A, if you like to read, but B, also a certain amount or ability for self reflection of your own location in culture. If you have, let's say, a knack for looking at narratives from A to B, different kinds of narratives. What are the different kinds of narratives? So any knack, I would say, with either linguistic expressions or narrative forms, ability to self-reflect about your location in culture. Um, so all of these cultural awareness are a plus. But even if you don't have that, and if you only like to read, and you are actually fascinated by the different ways that there are to be human, what makes us human, if that's just a question that fascinates you, that's enough too to come to the literature classroom, provided that you're willing to do the work um, in these 4 years. Yeah. So
I think there was a question somebody wants to know where are the students gone abroad for, or not abroad, or what are the higher education opportunities that students have opted for? I'll do one thing.
I
That was by
I
Anika. Yeah,
yeah. So can you name some of the unis abroad that APU students have been accepted to for postgraduate studies? No, this is not something
I
I
have,
can answer.
yeah, I have it. I can share that. So it's a long list. The thing is, I'll just bring up my slide. This is that we used it in the open house. That this question keeps coming. Huh? So broadly, this is a combination. It's not only English, okay, English literature. So look at that. It's a wide-ranging area from comparative literature to food safety to life sciences to variety of universities within India. Could be the English and Foreign Languages University. It could be Delhi University. Some of them come to Azim Range University to do an MA in education. So it all matters in terms of how did they uh, use that flexible curriculum at Azim Range University. So this is this is where most of them are studying. And if you look at abroad, where they've gone, and this is after a 3-year program. It's after a 4-year program, it will only go up, right? And there are people who are doing integrated PhD programs as well in the Americas. And the Europe list is probably much more larger. And I still remember somebody with humanities who went to Aberdeen, Scotland, to do journalism. I don't know why he chose Scotland. It could be some specific reason. But there are Robert Gordon University. I think that's where. So it's. I mean, they're all across. Huh? They're all across, and it's not about they've gone to different places. It's about a specific area of interest that they have, and the faculty members guiding them that this could be the place where you could do your post graduation. It's not just for the fun of it they've gone abroad. It's because they're specifically interested in that particular thematic or area, right? I'll stop now. So far so good. I think if there are any more questions, I'll just wrap up by just explaining. I think the curricular structure came out quite well the way Neha, the way you explained. So Anika, hope that not Anika's, yeah, Anika's question. I've also put a link there. You can just click that and read where they are. Yeah. And just bring up one more slide just to bring the entire thing into context so that just to summarize the way I look at program. So watching for just for to make the slide not too crowded, I'm just bringing up what we're offering at the Bhopal campus. Okay, so you choose BA English as a major, right? So you're graduating with the sensibilities in that major. That's the honors degree that you get. You combine that major with a minor of your interest. There could be more that will keep coming. I just for this discussion, I've just added three, and nobody's stopping you from doing data democracy and thing that. In fact, the BA English program, I don't know whether you noticed, there is a course on statistics and society, right? If you become a data journalist, if you want to become a data journalist, it shouldn't happen that, oh, I'm scared of numbers, I don't want. So, but still, which minor you want to do, you make a choice in the second year. Now, the flexibility of the course is such that you could choose in the final year, you could choose between uh, research or internship that you could. And research is a year-long research that you work with a faculty member. The other important component came out quite a few times when the faculty was speaking is that there is something called a flexible credit courses or a flexible curriculum that you do, and nobody's stopping you from doing a course in biology if you want. And I deliberately took. I had this interest in this particular topic in biology. Let me do that. Otherwise, of course, there's always the courses in history. So you can carve out a minor in history while doing a major in English if you wish to. Or, as Rukma said, you use the word buffet. Yeah, like if you like to do pick and choose a variety of things across the 4 years, that's also possible. So it's truly this is where we call a liberal education, right? Wherein you have liberal in outcomes. In what you do is also it's not like all the 30 in the English class will do 30 different things. Right? And the way the curriculum is structured, you design how you want your curriculum to be. And finally, before I forget, my favorite is the common curriculum course. So that kind of weaves and adds and builds and brings in together what you're learning, so that when you graduate, you're graduating with some transferable skills that you need uh, in the 21st century. Not only for your work life. Sometimes people are so obsessed with higher education being a preparation for the work life. But what you don't realize is this is also preparing for your personal life as well. How to live as a good, honest, rational citizen in today's world. That's the foundation that common curriculum is going to give you. And we English students will have much more than others because you're doing that day in and out in the while doing literature, right? And yeah, I sincerely hope not because I'm speaking to English faculty here. The humanities gets much more importance in today's school's curriculum than the STEM courses. I'm nothing against science technology. I'm an engineer myself, but I honestly feel so. With that, I think should we really stop? I think if there are more questions we can take, but generally we try to keep it within 1 hour so that when I upload this on the YouTube channel, people will watch 1 hour video and more, not more than that. Any final? I'll stop sharing this. Anything more you want to add in the curriculum? I just want to bring it together what we were speaking. Because they're not just joining a BA English program, but there's so much more for your curriculum at the same time University. Yeah. So on that note, any final words of wisdom that Debolina, Rukma, Neha you'd like to share? Could be about movies. I'll go and watch that movie. I've not seen it. I need to watch because the way you just explained that movie, I kind of stopped watching Karan Johar movies for some reason. But at this one, I'll go and watch for. I'm hearing a lot of interesting things about the movie.
I would just like to add that, the English curriculum is a lot of fun. And I would really like to stress on the fun aspect of it. Yeah, just it's a lot of fun, it's entertaining, it's about studying what has lasted in entertainment for so long. In fact, even if you want to be a content creator and you want to see what really holds people's attention, I mean, the 19th century people knew how to hold your attention for across many, many pages. So even if you don't want to study that, but if you just want to see the techniques that people deploy to hold your attention, because at the end of the day, even if you want to be a writer, you want to know how to hold attention. And some of these beautiful, beautiful stories that are really, really big, they sometimes manage to hold our attention. And there's this 6-word short story by Margaret Atwood. It goes like this: longed for him, got him, shit. So just 6 words, okay? Longed for him, got him, shit. So literature also has changed in terms of how big they were, their forms, depending on attention spans, depending on people's mediums, depending on the stories that are relevant. So if you want to learn how to tell stories that hold people's attention, depending on the context, then I would say that literature class is the most fun way to do it.
Thank you. On that positive note from Debolina, we'll edit with a fun note. So thank you for those who have joined and listening to, and thanks Rukma, Debolina, and Neha. It's a break there. It's a semester break. After 8 weeks, we give a break so that you can reflect back how it went by. Thanks for taking the time out on this Monday evening. And we have 2 more webinars coming up. Tomorrow we're going to do biology. Right? Biology is not only about your body. So let's see what the faculty members have to talk about biology. And on Wednesday, we close the webinar series talking about our new program, Information Sciences. So until then, have a wonderful evening. Have a good day ahead. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Good evening.
ಟೀಚರ್ಸ್ ಕಣ ಎಲ್ಲ ಟೀಚರ್ಸ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ಸ್